Thank you, Carol. Let me see. It's an honor for me to be here this evening at the Ford Foundation. And I want to thank Carol and Pablo and the Ford Foundation for giving the United Nations and the Capital Master Plan an opportunity to explain our project. We have actually a very long relationship with the Ford Foundation. The Ford Foundation was the donor of the Dag Hammarskjöld Library in the UN complex, which is one of the buildings that will be renovated. But before I introduce the team and before I talk about the project anymore, let me talk a little bit about the history of the United Nations, which is a wonderful real estate story, in the New York real estate story. The UN Secretary General, Ban Ki-moon, has taken the leadership position in the world to understand and reduce our impact on Earth's climate, and he has directed his staff to identify ways to reduce our carbon footprint and to become more environmentally responsible. The Capital Master Plan is the fundamental renovation of our aging facilities and will provide us with a once-in-a-generation opportunity to adopt modern and efficient technologies to reduce our carbon footprint, our water usage, our power usage, and other factors. There are many other important drivers in the Capital Master Plan. One is to improve the functionality, of course, of the compound as designed for 50 member states in a world that has now grown to 192 member states. And another driver, of course, is to enhance our safety in a far more dangerous world. The UN headquarters was completed in 1951 in accordance with the New York City Fire Code of the time, which was written in 1935. Much has changed over the years, but the UN headquarters remains largely unaltered. Consequently, much of the complex lacks sprinklers, fire and smoke detectors, and modern building management systems, and all of this will change through the process of the Capital Master Plan. A primary concern, of course, is security. Unfortunately, the United Nations has, in recent years, been the target of several terrorist attacks in Baghdad, Algiers, Kabul, and elsewhere, and the UN headquarters, although beautifully designed for the concerns of safety, it was for a previous century. Our project will result in significant improvements to our security infrastructure to provide greater protection to the UN staff, delegates, and visitors. Let's step back to those post-World War II years and discuss the initial planning and design of the UN, and it's a great story. President Roosevelt and Prime Minister Churchill coined the term United Nations to refer to the Allies during World War II, and the UN was born from the ashes of World War II, with the conviction that something was needed to avoid World War III. The first meeting of the UN General Assembly was in London in 1946. One of the first decisions ever taken by the UN was that it would create a permanent headquarters in the United States. That decision started a heated competition in America as to which city would be the winner. Predictably, New York was very aggressive for the honor, and the Permanent Headquarters Committee, chaired by Columbia, narrowed down the search to Boston, Philadelphia, San Francisco, and New York. Mayor O'Dwyer had been called by William Zeckendorf, who was the owner of a 17-acre parcel on First Avenue, which had previously been the site of slaughterhouses and other industry. Zeckendorf had been assembling the parcel for years for a large residential development known as X-City, designed by Wallace Harrison. Harrison, through his wife, was related to the Rockefeller family and knew that Zeckendorf was ready and willing to abandon his project. Through Harrison, Zeckendorf contacted Rockefeller and created a coalition with the mayor and Bob Moses to advance the proposal for a First Avenue site. Rockefeller, who had just completed Rockefeller Center with Harrison, was a strong advocate. In a few days, the New Yorkers prevailed to retain the title of World Capital, disappointing Philadelphia. The mayor, the Secretary General, and John D. Rockefeller stood for this photograph where Zeckendorf sold his land for $8.5 million, paid for by funds provided by Mr. Rockefeller. Harrison quickly redrew the ex-city designs and wrote General Assembly over the Opera House, and reused the drawings to a great extent to convince the General Assembly of the logic of their decision. The reuse of the ex-city plans, beautifully rendered by Hugh Ferriss, was very influential with the UN Selection Committee and also established the design character of the headquarters. In the context of today's land use decision-making, it is remarkable how quickly the UN reached agreement on the site and then created and approved a completed design. Within weeks, an international design team was selected and assembled by the United Nations. The Board of Design, under the direction of Harrison as director. The board consisted of a dozen outstanding professionals, each representing a different country, including Le Corbusier, representing France, Oscar Niemeyer representing Brazil, Nikolai Vassov representing the Soviet Union, and Howard Robertson representing the United Kingdom. In 3 months, in 1947, the board hammered out a final design concept that was presented to and accepted by the General Assembly. The UN compound is generally unchanged from that design concept, which was developed in 3 months by a team that had never met each other. Their success is obvious. The UN is one of the few examples of 20th century architecture, modern architecture, that is today recognized throughout the world. The UN complex includes 6 buildings totaling about 2.6 million square feet. And prior to our recent renovation and relocation of the staff, housed about 6,000 full-time staff. The complex helped define modernism with its simple and sensual lines, its generous use of glass, and the incorporation of post-war high-tech materials like Norgahide, Formica, and stainless steel. And in the 1950s manner, it was sustainable, with east-west rather than north-south exposures, large open spaces saved for the garden, operable windows, and many other green measures. The vision of the day was architecture in nature, or better said, as the machine in the garden. Features such as the use of local materials were incorporated, not to save energy, but to allow the composition to fit in with nature in a more harmonious way than the brick and stone cities of Europe, but they were energy efficient anyway. At the time it was built, the 17-acre complex was considered to be a highly innovative facility, employing many new technologies. From a design perspective, the modernist planning idea of organizing discrete but interconnected buildings in a poetic manner with the open space in the UN's chambers were ideas ahead of their time. The technology was cutting edge. The very high-tech glass curtain wall was one of the first of its kind of that scale, later followed by thousands of buildings. The use of river water to naturally cool the chiller plant equipment was also ahead of its time. But now our facility has aged and it's needed for a facelift. The mission of the Capital Master Plan is to manage the renovation of the headquarters in order to create a modern, safe, and sustainable work environment. Through the renovation, 20th century modernism and 21st century sustainability will be united. After years of debate and preparation, starting in 1998, the construction and fit-out of temporary office and conference space began in May 2008. As of today, the temporary office spaces are complete, and we have almost completed the process of relocating the 6,000 staff from the headquarters to swing space. Renovation of the permanent facilities has started, and the project will be completed at the end of 2013. The project is broken down into several phases. The first phase, which we are just completed, consisted of moving the staff out into swing space. Our renovation work required the relocation of almost all staff. As you can imagine, this was no small task. After identifying the appropriate space and executing the fit-outs, we needed to organize a phased relocation entirely on weekends to reduce the impact of the project on the functioning of the organization. This work is now complete. Over the past months, we have moved a few hundred staff every weekend into leased space on Madison Avenue, 3rd Avenue, 46th Street, 42nd Street, and several other locations. The conferencing and meeting functions of the UN and the Office of the Secretary General were required by the US and UN security to stay within the compound. So we constructed a temporary building on the North Lawn. We broke ground in 2008 and the North Lawn building was officially opened for business in December 2009. The Secretary General and his staff are now located in the North Lawn building, along with other key officials to support the intergovernmental process. The building has 5 large conference rooms and an additional dozen or so medium-sized and small meeting rooms. The walls of the building have been graced with artwork from the UN's extensive collection of gifts from member states, providing a safe temporary home for the art and adding some color to the Spartan building. Beginning last year, we also commenced significant work on the infrastructure of the basements of the complex. The work includes the creation of a new data center, which will replace the aging server storage areas in the Secretariat. This was a significant undertaking, and it's now in its final stages. The renovation of the Secretariat and Conference Building is now beginning. When the Conference Building renovation is completed in slightly under 2 years, the General Assembly function will move into the temporary North Lawn building. And then we will start the renovation of the General Assembly building. The 2 buildings on the south side of the complex, the Dag Hammarskjöld Library and the South Annex building, will be renovated during the last phase of the 5-year project. These buildings are currently in use as swing space. The project budget is just under $1.9 billion, funded by the member states through a special 5-year assessment. The funds are paid for by all member states, divided up within a formula that reflects the economic strength of each member state. For instance, the US pays about 22% of the costs. We have assembled a highly skilled and talented team of design and management professionals, represented here tonight by the firms HLW International, Heinges, and Siskin Hennessy Group. Our goal is to renovate the entire UN, upgrading and modernizing its infrastructure, restoring the character-defining historic spaces, respecting and applying the host country and host city building codes, safety and fire codes, and making the UN headquarters more energy efficient and sustainable and meeting the high standards of security. The project will incorporate many new technologies to improve the environmental performance, including meeting LEED's gold, and my colleagues will detail those improvements. Aside from the sustainability and security improvements, the project will also meet the host countries and international standards for historic preservation. But due to our sovereign international status, the project will not be certified by any organization or jurisdiction. We are working closely with the New York City Department of Buildings and the Fire Department and many other state and local agencies. All these authorities have agreed that we will apply building codes and other codes on a voluntary basis because of the UN's privileges and immunities under international treaty obligations. As will be discussed by my colleague, Bob Heinges, who is the senior partner in his firm, the curtain wall is one of the many aspects of the UN headquarters which is showing its age. It is a wonderful case study in balancing many factors. We will, of course, be making substantial improvements in our heating, ventilating, and air conditioning systems. Keith Fitzpatrick, Vice President from Siskin Hennessy, will fully describe those changes in his presentation this evening. We are also challenging the enclosed culture of the United Nations, offering open office layouts for much of the staff and other excellent cultural upgrades. John Gehring, senior partner with HLW, will discuss the physical and cultural changes that will be accomplished in the Secretariat. Actually, the changes to open office are probably some of the more profound changes that we are doing in this renovation to the UN culture. It's an interesting moment for the UN. We measure our performance within a variety of different metrics. Most importantly, we will reduce total energy consumption of the United Nations headquarters by over 50% as compared to existing conditions, and we will reduce our carbon footprint by over 45%. We will also reduce our consumption of fresh water by over 40%. The Capital Master Plan also provides the opportunity to improve the operational performance of the organization. We're in the second year of an initiative by the Secretary General called Cool UN. For the past 2 summers, we have raised the thermostats by 5 degrees to 78, saving energy on cooling. And in the winter, we lower the thermostats 5 degrees to 67. We're also taking many other significant steps to operate more sustainably. All these steps will result in a very green, sustainable project. However, as previously stated, due to the international character of the United Nations, the project will not be certified through the USGBC or any other system. The project meets the criteria of LEED Gold and similar ratings in the Green System of the United Kingdom, the CASB system of Japan, and the Green Star system of Australia. They're all commendable and competitive programs, and I strongly support their basic concepts, rewarding sustainable new construction. However, I must note that none of these programs provide proper credit and therefore encouragement for the single most important decision that a building owner makes when faced with a major renovation or construction project, like the Capital Master Plan, which is to either recycle the building or tear it down. The existing evaluation systems do not provide adequate recognition or weight to those projects like the United Nations that opt to recapture the enormous energy of the initial construction effort and avoid the additional energy of demolition and new construction. For the building evaluation industry to encourage the preservation of existing buildings as a plausible option, there must be a better reward system. Without a bigger carrot, we will not slow down the cycle of demolition and new construction, and the extent of the world's new construction is problematic for those concerned with climate change. I'm often asked by member states if it would have been less expensive to completely demolish and rebuild the UN. It's a reasonable question, and the answer is no. Even aside from the obvious loss of historic and iconic cultural values, it would not have been less expensive, and from an overall energy and environmental standpoint, it would have been a significant waste of carbon. By far, our significant achievement in the area of material reuse is the avoidance of the expenditure of the embodied energy and other so-called embodied effects of construction activity. The embodied energy, also sometimes referred to as the life cycle assessment of a material, accounts for the energy used to extract, fabricate, deliver, install, demolish, and dispose of a particular material. In the case of the Capital Master Plan, we will preserve up to 95% of the existing exterior walls, floors, and roofs, not including the windows, and at least 50% of the interior elements. The renovation of the UN demonstrates that even with this iconic complex of historic buildings, with conflicting budgetary, programmatic, and security demands, a highly sustainable renovation can be executed while fully respecting the character-defining features. The Capital Master Plan is renovating the UN headquarters with the primary objective of providing a safer and more energy-efficient meeting and working place. But the emphasis of the Secretary General on environmental stewardship is our motivation. Thank you for your attention this evening and for your interest, and I will now turn this over to John Gehring. Thank you very much.